Morning everyone, this is Tim at Makers Machining. We're out here looking at this label on this decal on the back of our pickup truck here. Shows a picture of the J.I. Case Threshing Machine Company in Racine, Wisconsin. Today's a cold, sunny day in Chicago area. It's 10 degrees, so it's a good day to work indoors on some of our parts that we're making. We're going to be working with Dan here. He's got a lifelong interest in steam engines and steam trains and that type of thing. We've had some videos posted earlier on engine 765 from the Nickel Plate Road. So Dan's interested in working on that. He's in a couple of clubs with that. So without further ado, we're going to go inside where it's warm and talk about some of the parts that we're making. So you can follow us in here. I'm going to grab this and we'll walk right in where it's warm. Go ahead. Dan's going to be our tour guide here. So just watch your step there. Okay. It's nice and warm in here. Okay. Makers Machining is primarily set up to do the basics of machining, but lately we've had a lot of interesting field trips that we've done and little topics of just interesting stories of some of the basic machining operations that took place a century ago to put us where we're at today. You know, all these guys made all these machines. The Industrial Revolution started in the middle 1800s, and so many mechanical devices were made to help mankind do his work easier. And so steam engines were a large part of that, along with the electricity, the light bulb, the telephone, all those inventions, the assembly lines, that type of thing. So we're here with Dan, and maybe we'll walk around over here and look at some of the parts on the table here. I'm going to turn this over to Dan here. You can tell a little bit about what some of these things are on the table. You come a little closer with the camera there and zoom in on these. Here's an old model steam engine. It's a 1-inch scale.
Yeah, it's 1-inch scale. So for every 1 foot on the real one, this is 1 inch. So the back wheels on the big steam engine are 6 foot, so these are 6 inches tall. It's just a model someone made probably in the 60s, 70s, I would guess. You could still get castings for them today.
For the small models?
Yeah, for this. Okay. For this actually the same one.
Yeah, the wheels are all cast. You can see the treads on the wheels there. There's a big chain drive for the steering. These wheels turn a little bit. The steering wheel actually works. It turns a gear that moves some chains that pulls the front wheels one way or the other for steering. What are some of these other parts we got on here, Dan? You've got a few things going here.
So these couple things, it's for one of our family's 60 horsepower Case steam engine. This is the piston for it. The piston it's a 10-inch bore and a 10-inch stroke. This is the connecting rod. So the piston is connected to the piston rod, and then it goes into the crosshead, which is on this end, and there's a couple bronze bearings. There'll be another set up here, and then this takes the motion from the piston and drives it into a crank disc, and then that goes to the flywheel here.
Yeah, here's exactly the parts Dan's talking about. This connecting rod here is this one right here, isn't it, Dan? Yeah, that's the one. The piston's inside of here. It goes back and forth and drives this connecting rod, which in turn transfers the power to the big flywheel. That gets the momentum going, and then it's a series of gears here that drive the entire movement of the machine. And what are these things used for, Dan? These steam engines?
So this would be a traction engine. This one, it can move under its own power. They did make some where it didn't have the gears. You would just run stuff from the flywheel. You could use it pretty much anything before they had tractors, electric motors. They had steam engines for it. You could hook a plow up to here, plow the fields, any sort of farm implements. They would use them for heavy hauling, transporting stuff. You have your flywheel. You can run sawmills, thrashing machines, whatever you needed to use back then.
It basically takes the place of big electric motors back in the day, because this was something that could go out on sites in different places and run equipment there.
Yeah.
And I know that when they have these steam engines, they take them to tractor pulls, and these things have so much power.
Yeah.
They can just keep on pulling.
Yeah.
Whatever weight they put behind them, these have so much power it doesn't even stop them.
Yeah.
So
The one that this goes to, it weighs like 17,000 pounds when it's empty, but you put a couple 100 gallons of water and your fuel in it, so it brings it up to about 20,000 pounds probably.
and your fuel is coal or wood or both?
Yeah, coal or wood. They did have some that were straw burners. They also had some that would burn oil.
Okay. Yeah, I guess back in those days oil was kind of coming around too, or something that was
it
available.
depends on what part of the country you're in. You know, out west they're coal, so they use oil more.
Quite an industry of making machines to help mankind with their work. Here's a pressure gauge.
Yeah.
What kind of pressure do these cylinders basically have? And actually, just let's explain this thing here. You've got a firebox in there that heats water, which in turn the steam that comes out of here goes in and drives the piston back and forth. Kind of like it's a combustion type engine like an automobile, but this is using steam instead.
Also, where an automobile it's only the piston is forced in one direction, this is a power stroke on both sides of the piston. So were you talking about power before? It's only rated, it's at 60 horsepower, but the RPM on the flywheel is about 250 RPM. So when you have that 60 horsepower and 250 RPM, it's something like 1,000 or 1,500 foot-pounds of torque. So it has, 60 horsepower. Your lawnmower pretty much has that anymore, but it's a different type of power. It's got the torque behind it.
I gotta qualify Dan's comments here a little bit. Dan has lived his whole life around steam engines. When he was about half the size he is right now to right now. I've known Dan and his family forever. He's grown up in the steam interest. His grandfather was a steam guy as well. And now his dad makes model steam implements. He's got a little list of things that he manufactures and makes for collectors, scale model sizes. So their whole life has revolved around the steam activity of machinery, but they preserve and keep these machines running. If you go to threshing shows or whatever, you can see some of these machines actually still in action. This one here, if you want to zoom in on this is the, you explain it, Dan.
So these parts on the table, the piston and the connector rod, are actually from this engine. And these parts, this engine was built in 1911. So these parts are 108 years old.
It's maintenance and taking care of stuff, replacing parts as they need it. They're in the Northern Indiana Thresher or Historical Power Association, I think is what it says on there. Dan's also in the Fort Wayne Historical Society. They do a big
locomotive
train engine, and that locomotive actually takes trips throughout the area occasionally, and man, it's just a thundering train coming through. When they go through the stops, they have run-bys or drive-bys, whatever.
Yeah, run-bys.
Yeah, and we're not going to call it a drive-by, but we'll call it a run-by, where these trains come flying through areas, and it rattles your molars. There's just so much power in those machines. So, interesting stories here with all the parts that they make. We're going to have another clip right after this one. We're going to be making some parts, so we're going to actually do some machining on this video for Makers Machining, just to talk about some of the ways to make parts. We got some left-handed threads we're turning, so you'll be interested to see how that works. So we'll sign off on this one for right now and move on to the next step here. So we'll talk to you in a little bit. So long.